you look at a lot of these teams in the playoffs right now, it's very rare someone gets built entirely from within, like a Tampa Bay Lightning. And even then, they had to kind of branch out and like make a Ryan McDonagh trade and stuff of that nature to almost put it over the mark, but at the same time, just to help boost that young nucleus that you have. And you look at Anaheim this last year and like with the vets that they've brought in over the last couple of years and whatnot, but they aren't even a team that I would say has been all too aggressive. So I guess my question would be, in terms of the Blackhawks, how aggressive do you think Kyle Davidson will get this offseason? Because he has been relatively reserved since that 24. Like obviously last year compared to 24, he was a bit more reserved, but he's shown an ability to at least want to be aggressive at times. So I'm just curious, where do you think that line will be this offseason?
Yeah, on the first part of it, I find it interesting. I saw a graphic a few weeks ago about the playoff teams and how they acquired each of their players. And
I think
for almost every
I think we
team,
both saw too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was majority by trade. And several people sent it to me and said, "Oh, it's proof that like you got to win trades, you got to trade aggressively to build a team." And that is true to some extent, but I don't think anyone has ever tried to build it fully from within. That's just been kind of the prevailing logic, and so that's what teams do. And it probably is the right way to go, but I don't think we can take away from that you can't build entirely from within, because I just don't know if anyone's ever done as full-scale a rebuild in the NHL as the Blackhawks have. I mean, you could make the argument that the Blackhawks have not only the best prospect pool in the league right now, but of all time, because I don't know if anyone has ever done this before. Like, I don't think if you look back 10, 15, 20 years, the prospect pool was never like league-wide as concentrated in a few teams as it is now. Just the tanking phenomenon wasn't as much of a thing. And so, the Sharks may have the second best prospect pool in NHL history. This hasn't been an approach for that long. But I do agree that realistically, in all likelihood, they will need to make trades to improve and to get over that hump. And I think Davidson wants to do that. I think he's been more open, signaling enthusiasm for that the past few months. And I think that's partly strategic to show that, like, to the fans that, hey, I'm trying here. There's just not a lot of availability. So at least he can fall back on that if they aren't able to get anything done, that he did try. That's the other challenging part of, I don't know if there's ever been a cap environment like this before in the NHL, where there's this little talent reaching the free agency market and becoming available for trade. I'm very on board with him trying to make a big swing for a top six forward and maybe for a top pair defenseman too. I think they should be willing to offer the number 4 pick for that. I think they should certainly be willing to offer the Panthers and Oilers picks next year. I think you should certainly be willing to offer some of your young NHL players. There's just not enough space for all of these guys to fill out a team. Like, it's just not going to be possible, and you want to sell high on them before they get squeezed out and start diminishing value. So I definitely agree that he should do everything he can to make a trade. I'm just a little skeptical if anyone's going to move, really. Like, I think I wrote in March, right after the trade deadline, like the options of looking at Nyes or Robertson or Robert Thomas. And I think those guys are still on the radar, and there's maybe a few others. I mean, we'll see if Alex Tuch gets to UFA, but I wouldn't put the odds above 50% for each of them that they actually get traded. So my column for this week, actually, it's going to come out this Sunday, is that it's, if any of them move, Davidson needs to make sure that the Blackhawks are well positioned to be where they move to. But if they don't move, it's just out of your control.
And I think Pierce and I have been of the camp of, like, it does take two to tango. Like, we're understanding of that regard. I think at least a lot of the fan base comes from the perspective of it. You know, when you build up a prospect pool like this, like you said, there's only 18 skating spots on a roster, maybe 21 if you're counting extras. Not all these guys are going to make the show, let alone be impact players. So you have to make decisions at certain times. And I'll be honest, the Hawks might be in a position where you can overpay. Like, yeah, it may not be in it. Like, yeah, maybe you're trading your number 5 prospect, one of the young roster players, and a first, but you're in a position that you can do that. that I don't think a lot of other teams have. Like, I think I saw an article that said, like, the Hawks' ninth best prospect could be some prospect pool's best. You need to take advantage of that, in my opinion. And I think, even like, obviously the big names you mentioned, the Robert Thomases, the Matthew Nyes, like, those would be great, but I feel like Pierce brings it up every offseason. There's always someone who gets moved that you just don't expect. Like, I think the one that Pierce and I always come back to is no one expected Mikhail Sergachev to get traded 2 years ago. Like, you need to be making calls like that of teams that maybe aren't in the best cap situation. Like, I think the Hawks got to get really creative this offseason with that. Like you said, like, the cap is going up. It's a very unique cap environment, but even with the cap coming up, there's still a handful of teams that are cap strapped and they got some big names coming up. So even if you can't get those big names, you should be creative and see if some of those guys who, like, a name that I brought up last week was like Mason McTavish, someone who maybe has fallen out of love with that coaching staff, but is also signed for 5 more years. So you'd have to give up a little more for him, but he fits the window. So it's just, I'd like to see some creativity this offseason for sure. And we've seen the articles of the last couple of years. It sounds like he has tried, but I think you're in a position right now, especially with the young nucleus that you have, that you can, maybe dip your toe in a little deeper than you have the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think we've seen him be willing to overpay to trade up in the draft for sure. Like the trade for the Mason West pick last year was clearly an overpay based on the model, and Davidson even admitted as such right after the fact. But it's a little bit harder when it's parting with actual players who you've already invested in and maybe a little emotionally attached to. And by the same logic, I mean, it should be the exact same thing. And it's just maybe a little bit harder to stomach. And so I think that would be a big step for him to be willing to do that and give up on a guy, not give up, but be part ways with a guy that you really believe in to invest in the current present, just because that's what the smart thing is to do, even if it's not, where your heart completely lies. So it'll be interesting to see if he's willing to do that. This is one of the trickier parts of the job, and one we haven't really gotten much of a sample size on how he does with it yet. And I think you are right that those big names have received the majority of the attention, and it's probably not going to be the most robust summer for movement overall, but there are a lot of teams with somewhat uncertain situations, whether it's GM changes, whether it's kind of questions about the culture, or kind of what the championship potential of their team is. Like, they're not necessarily sellers, but they might be looking to shake things up. And maybe you can take advantage of that, even if you're not in position to do like a hockey 1-for-1 kind of trade. Like, I'm curious what Seattle does with some of their changes, what New Jersey does, what Ottawa does after that first round sweep. Like, I think there's a lot of teams that could make interesting moves, even if they're not like selling. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening around the league this offseason. I think that's something Davidson was asked about after the draft lottery, and mentioned that he feels like this is the most uncertain he's ever been going into a summer about what teams' intentions were, and with so many new GMs and everything, kind of what the dialogue is around the league. There's a lot for him to figure out internally in those conversations with other GMs over the next few weeks.
Yeah, you bringing up like being attached too much to your prospects, to me, in my mind, again, I'm not in Kyle Davidson's shoes, like I don't work with him, I'm not an assistant to him, but I feel that's going to be the biggest hurdle for him to jump over, because he likes his guys. I think GM has their guys, but the less GMs are like, oh, like that my prospect is not as good as everyone else thinks it is. Like, if I give up on him to get the start, like I think of Bill Guerin doing the Quinn Hughes trade. Yeah, he probably loved picking Z Boyum, and I don't know if he was there when they drafted Marco Rossi, but they gave up a couple, like another prospect, Liam Ogren. But the whole thing was, yeah, okay, I like these guys, but they're not Quinn Hughes, and Vegas has done that so many times. Like, the worst of it they got, I think, was trading Suzuki for Pacioretty, and they got a few good years out of him. So I just feel the teams that are always making moves and always at the top of the NHL, like, don't overrate their prospects. They're like, okay, they have some value, let's cash in on that value. And I think if Davidson starts to like open up more on, oh, I don't want to trade this guy, but like, I always say I don't think they're going to trade a Bedard. I don't even think they're going to trade Frundell or Lev Shunov or Nazar, but I think anyone else, maybe not cancer off, but like Nick Lars, if his name comes up in a trade and somehow you can upgrade to like a guaranteed top 6 goal scorer, you got to do that if that's an option available to you. Or Sam Renzel, I think, is another name too. Like the second tier of guys, prospects.
Yeah, Renzel, Lardis, Green, Moore, any of those guys, Camesso. If that is what puts a trade over the top, if you package it with the 4th overall pick and the Panthers or Oilers 2027 pick, I think you absolutely do that. And I think the fact that they do at least now have NHL players to sell, even though they're not fully established and not at their peaks, does help a little bit, whereas they didn't have that to offer previous years. If you're talking to Dallas about Robertson, if that ends up being something that's discussed, you could offer, here's a Ryan Green or here's an Oliver Moore, and he's a guy who can immediately slot into your lineup. Certainly he's not anywhere close to Robertson right now and probably won't ever be, but at least he can contribute a little bit and help you in that way. It's not entirely like futures. So I do think that moves the needle a little bit.
Teams just want players. I don't think you can just trade your draft picks for a high-end player like the Hawks when they dumped off DeBrincat for 7th overall, and I think 38 or 39th overall, whatever it was. And the trade that always comes back to my mind is last year when Utah got JJ Peterka. They traded away Michael Kessering and Josh Doan, and Josh Doan has been a great fit for Buffalo, even though Peterka is kind of up and down with Utah, but yeah, teams don't want to just do draft picks and prospects straight up for good players. They want to make quote unquote hockey trades and also get pieces back. And I think the Hawks are slowly starting to get players that have played into the NHL in their system. Maybe not established players, but they have the potential there and they've played in the NHL. I think of Louis Crevier. I think they're going to keep Louis Crevier, but that's a perfect guy, like a Michael Kessering. It kind of came out of nowhere and is found goods. Maybe that's another guy you could trade, another asset.
Yeah, for sure. I have a soft spot for Louis Crevier.
I think we all do.
If a team, if someone's going to value him highly, then I think you have to be willing to do it. And it's overcoming those soft spots and realizing that value is more important than emotional attachment. That is the hump that he has to get over. So I can kind of relate to them there, because if I'm in his shoes, I'm like, don't want to trade Louis Crevier, but if that's what the value makes sense for, then you got to do it.